Thank you, Sean. It is such a pleasure to be here with you and everyone else today. What a fantastic event, and I'm happy to see so many people engaged from across the country. Coming up next, you're in for a treat. Before I get into the panel, though, I did want to just share with everyone that I'm coming from the Small Business Administration, where all throughout the agency, there's a variety of people and programs all passionate about helping small businesses start and grow. So it's great to be here with USPTO today, especially focused on folks who are the makers and the big ideas and the inventors. So today we're gonna, kind of target a piece of the large challenge of what it's like to be an entrepreneur, especially as you are focused on so many elements from what you're trying to build to, to your actual business. So the office that I come from is the Office of Innovation and Technology, focusing on the Small Business Innovation Research Program. So you might have heard about SBIR throughout the program. So much of the work that we do focuses on people who are building out new technologies and kind of digging into the deep tech space, very high risk. So I'm happy to be here today to offer up advice and also to kind of facilitate some engaging conversation amongst our panelists. So without further ado, I would love to have our panelists introduce themselves. They have such interesting backgrounds, and I'm really happy with this combination that we have here today. As Sean mentioned, our panel's on building your pitch. It's a very large topic. We could probably spend hours, if not days, going through all the pieces around the history of pitches, which have been going on for hundreds or thousands of years in terms of all different kinds of companies. But today we're going to at least have a good conversation and hope that you can walk away with some important elements that will help you along your journey. So back to the panelists. I'm going to have each of the panelists give a very short introduction. If you can tie it in a bit to the theme of today in our panel, and also invention-con overall. A lot of folks who are very eager to find information and advice, support, encouragement for that hard road that can be entrepreneurship. And so I will turn it over, if you don't mind, Heather, I'll have you go first. Move on to Shelly and Scott.
Thanks, Brittany. My name is Heather Metcalf, and I am the Chief Research Officer for the Association for Women in Science, which is a national level nonprofit based out of Washington, D.C. We support science workplaces and being equitable and support our members that are part of our national level organization and also chapter and affiliate organizations all around the country, and some actually located internationally as well. I'm also project director for our STEM to Market initiative. One part of that initiative is an accelerator program for STEM trained women who want to commercialize their research. So we really support innovators and inventors on their entrepreneurship pathway in a way that really keeps equity in mind and doesn't ask them to fix themselves or to be different than who they are. So that's a little bit about me. I'll pass it over to Shelly.
Thank you. Thank you to USPTO for this awesome event, and to Brittany and Heather and Scott. I'm Shelly Bell. I'm the founder of Black Girl Ventures. We work to create access to capital for Black and brown women founders. One of our signature programs is a pitch competition. And so we are like Shark Tank meets Kickstarter live. So we have women pitch on stage, and then the audience actually votes with their dollar. So they donate to the founders that they like the best pitch. And then we grant that capital back out to the founders. We funded directly 76 women. We've been doing this since 2016. We used to travel pre-COVID across various different markets, and now we're hosting them online. I also do a lot of pitch coaching and speaking on like how to speak about your business and how to pitch, because it ties right into the work that we do. In terms of inventions, we have women who come through who have patented products. We have a woman from a company called Minky Blue. It's a bag for commuters, but she has patented technology inside. We have a onesie, it's called Grow With Me. Some founders who came up with a growing onesie that just keeps growing with the baby. They also have a patent on that. So it's awesome to work with founders who have inventions and ideas where some part of what they do. I also used to work at USPTO long ago. So it's nice to come full circle to be able to help people pitch their ideas and show them the path to getting patents and trademarks.
Hey everybody, my name is Scott Hynd. First and foremost, I want to really thank the USPTO, Sean Wilkerson, for having me here. It's an unbelievable honor. Brittany, thank you for hosting. Shelly, Dr. Metcalf, I am by far and away the least intelligent and least impressive of the panelists here today, so it is an honor to be with you folks. Like I said, my name is Scott Hynd. I'm on-air talent at QVC. I've been there for about 20 years. I am a product expert there. I've represented somewhere in the area of 600 or 700 different products over those 20 years, thousands of appearances, and I've been fortunate to kind of just go over the $1 billion in sales mark. And I say that simply because a lot of the products I represent come from inventors. In fact, and again, I assure you I'm not bragging because I've had plenty of failures, but I do hold the all-time record for most units of a product ever sold in one day, and that came from a single inventor out of Nashville, Tennessee, with an incredible product. So as sort of a way to give back to the community and to the business that's been so good to me, I'd love to appear on these panels. I also sit on the board of directors of the United Inventors Association based out of Washington, D.C., and it's just so much fun to do these. My only sadness is that I'm not able to do it in person, but it is a genuine honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it is. Thank you so much, all of you, for your introductions. It is sad, Scott, that we are not in person. However, it is amazing that we can have this kind of reach and engagement. And on that note, I want to remind everyone, if you have questions or comments for the panel, please send those in. We can try to address as many of those, as we're here now. You can tell all four of us are very passionate about helping others and sharing those insights. And so please take advantage of our time today. Even though we can't literally see you, we can feel you there and are just excited for your interest. To get started, we have a series of questions and we're going to go through some discussion just on our own. I know that Sean put us towards the end because he knew that we would be able to keep your interest and be able to share so much information in a very enjoyable, valuable format. So we're going to start with some of the basics as we dive in the layers of the conversation. And so I want to ask all the panelists this time to be able to share from your experience. As an entrepreneur is starting and they're even just thinking about who do I pitch and what do I pitch, what are some of the essentials just as they're kind of getting off the ground, trying to keep it simple. We don't have to give all the advice, but as you're talking to people, just the very basics of putting together their pitch. What are the kinds of things that you say, and do you have any examples that would be helpful for the crowd? Anyone can start.
Yeah, I'll start. So the really simple basics are like, who are you? What is this thing? And why does it matter? And also, why you for it? And so I think, because when we think about unique value proposition, sometimes people think that being the only one is the unique value proposition. And that's not actually always the case. Your story is a huge part of it. So, you usually like dropping a stat or some story to bring people into what you're doing and then revealing the steps as to how it works or how it's going to make money. So if you're doing a VC pitch, a venture capital pitch, they're going to want to know, this is great, but how does it make money? What's the revenue? What is your traction? What is the market size? Is the things they're going to want to know if you're pitching directly to a venture capitalist for funding. And then what is this potential to grow? So a lot of times people think that they need to have all the elements of every single piece right then. But we know that you're not at the end of your journey when you pitch. We just want to be able for you to tell the story in a way where it's hard hitting with the numbers, know your numbers, and to see where it's going to grow.
Thank you, Shelly. You brought up a few things we'll probably dive into a little bit more later, but want to also give opportunity here for Scott and Heather to kind of bring up their essentials of pitch prep or advice.
Go ahead, Dr. Metcalf.
Thank you. I think Shelly's absolutely right that the story that an entrepreneur tells about why them and why this product and why this product for this problem is really, really important. In the work that I do, a lot of entrepreneurs come to STEM to Market and to AWIS after they have gotten advice that they need to be more aggressive in their pitching or learn how to pitch more like white men pitch. And I think that that gets them to, encourages them to embrace who they are and what they bring to the table as part of their story. So I would echo that authenticity is really key to being able to tell your story from a place that's really honest and that gets people excited about what you're bringing to the table. I'd also add in addition to why the person or the organization or the company that you're pitching to, or the firm that you're pitching to, because a lot of times entrepreneurs approach making a pitch from the perspective of I need money or I need resources in some way, shape, or form, not recognizing that the investors also need you. They need the technology, the invention that you're bringing to the table, and so you enter into this relationship with an investor or other resource provider that it can change the power dynamic when you remember that they need you too, and you want to choose wisely who it is that you're asking to support your company, because you do enter into a relationship and it can shape how your company moves forward in a really big way.
Yeah, first and foremost, I'd like to echo the sentiments of my esteemed colleagues on the panel here. I do think story is important, and I do think Dr. Metcalf, what you said, is very important. And my angle at it comes a little bit more from the television side of things. So we have a finished product, and we're now looking to hopefully convince people that they would like to buy this product. And so for us, the story isn't quite as important. And I'm not saying it's not important, because I agree. You're betting on the horse and the jockey, so you got to have both. You've got to look the part. There's a lot of things we could go down the road and talk about. In my world, though, when I give this speech, when I talk to people, there's two things people as consumers want to know. What does it do, and what does it do for me? And I think that's just a different way of saying what Shelly said, but it really holds true. What does it do? What does it do for me? A lot of times the how or the why developed into the backstory is nice, and on Shark Tank, it's really, really important. But like a lot of times, if it doesn't do something that people want or people are willing to buy, all the background as to how or why I got invented the technology, unfortunately, won't cut the mustard. So what I say to people all the time is, if you have a product, figure out what it does, but more importantly, what does it do for people? Inherently, American consumers are selfish, right? We want to buy something that does something for us. My example I would give you is this. I come from the great state of Pennsylvania, home of Hershey's chocolate. Milton Hershey was an incredible philanthropist to this day, gave modern day billions of dollars to charity, all kinds of homes and for orphan kids. It's unbelievable charity, and it continues on to this day. But if he made a chocolate bar that tastes like something you picked out of the trash, nobody would care about that. So at the end of the day, you say, what does it do? Well, people would say, well, it's a chocolate bar, and what does it do for me? It satisfies my hunger. Not exactly true. What it does is it satisfies your hunger, but what it does for me is it reminds me of when I was a kid trick-or-treating, or when I tried to steal little miniatures out of my grandma's candy jar. It brings back great memories, and that's why people love Hershey's candy, because it's good, but it brings back incredible memories. So I'd urge anyone watching to try and find whatever your product does, but what it does for people.
That's fantastic, Scott. And I do appreciate having the different kind of perspectives here in the panel, because everyone in the audience also has kind of a different product or service that they're wanting to pitch. They have a different place they're doing that, where they're coming from. So I think it's really helpful for us here, even in the short period of time, to be able to kind of differentiate so that people can see where they might find, value in that, especially as you're talking with the audience. So Shelly or Heather, anything else to add in terms of kind of audience and how you tailor your pitch based on who you're talking to? And Scott, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I also love the interesting group around how to pitch, because I'm so intrigued by the TV part. I hear pitches all the time for the venture part or for funding. So interestingly enough, I do think when I'm coaching people, I'm like, are you talking to VC funders? Are you talking to the more philanthropic community? Because they are listening for different things. The philanthropic community is listening for impact. They may or may not be concerned about how much. They want to know it works enough to bring in revenue, but maybe it's not about how much. And for the VC community, they definitely want to know, what is the return? So, also going to what Scott was saying about what does it do for me? The what does it do for them is bring them money back. And so they want to know, is this going to be able to do that? And is it going to be able to do that within a certain amount of time? So what level of infusion of capital would it take for you to be able to return a certain amount of capital? And is that even possible? And at first, really early stage, it doesn't look like it. So you may be communicating, you may be doing, what you think is great with your pitch. And then the VC is like, oh, you're too early. And I've had many founders get upset about being told they're too early. And I'm like, hey, just know that if you're too early, it's because you just need to learn more lessons. Learn more lessons to land on a clearer business model so that it can return the level of capital that the VC may be looking for if that's what you're going for, right? And then you're looking at, different rounds, whether people are your lead, which means they may be a little bit more invested. So, you're the founder, like you said, betting on the jockey and the horse, the founder parts of the story, not necessarily your life story, but more about your dedication to this product, right? Like, how dedicated are you going to be if it takes you 5 to 10 years to get the return that the VC is looking for? And in the philanthropic community, they're more like, well, how is it going to impact people? Not necessarily help in the way we're like, oh, they help people. That's really light. It's more like, what is the impact on people? Which is a little bit stronger in numbers.
No, that's great, Shelly. I appreciate you bringing those things up.
Shelly, I think that's an incredible point. And what I say is, a lot of times, and I'm so with you, a hobby is not a profession. And so I think so many times I've seen people blow opportunities because it doesn't look like they're taking it serious. Maybe they didn't, go and just buy a halfway decent, nice outfit. Maybe they didn't get a nice marketing, thing that you can print at FedEx or a business card, or I agree with you so much. People have to believe in you. So I don't want to downplay the story, and I hope you folks didn't take that the wrong way. I also just come from a world where we have finished products and we have to, we have to sell them now. So, but I agree, people do need to know that you believe in your product and that not just that you want it, but you really want it. And so I'm with you the whole way. Do the whole package, do the whole package when you go to pitch, be prepared, know your market, and just look the part for sure.
So that's great, Scott. In the story too, I mean, where you're coming from, Scott, there's short periods of time, right? So it has to be so laser focused.
Right.
So, and Heather, you brought up authenticity earlier. And so I don't know if you have anything else to add in terms of like, how can you even be that authentic in some of these situations that are manufactured or are in a short time frame? How can people start to think about, being intentional, both about the way they approach and the preparation and the execution of their pitch?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really great point. So when we're working with our entrepreneurs, we always start off with, what are your values, what are your goals, and what is your vision? Because those can sort of function as a true north that entrepreneurs can use as they're making their decisions. There's a lot of pressure, I think, Scott, when you were saying, you have to look the part. Within entrepreneurship ecosystems, looking the part often means looking like a white guy in a hoodie, especially if you're in the Silicon Valley area. And so looking the part can be pretty impossible for some folks. But I think if you add in making sure that you are staying true to those goals, to those values, and telling, when we talk about authenticity, it's also about what is the expertise that you're bringing to the table, especially if you're in the early stages of pitching and early stage. I think, Shelly, you were talking about sometimes people pitch too early, and it is a learning opportunity when you get feedback from doing that. But I think it's about what you're bringing to the table that can allow any investor understand that you have the skills and the expertise on your team to make them see the possibility of where what you're bringing to the table can grow. So I think that that's also part of authenticity. It's not necessarily telling your entire personal backstory, but tailoring that story, how it connects to your product, how it connects to your team, how it connects to the future possibility of where your company or your product can go in the market.
Oh, that's great. I would like to do a kind of a follow-up question on the timing piece, because I'm interested from any of you here on the panel, what are your thoughts on the early side of pitching? And maybe it's more so, what's that evolution from someone still trying to decide how they're going to approach either selling the product and, kind of in Scott's case, or even trying to get that further investment. So they're trying to get feedback, or are they already at a place where it's a full-on pitch? So if there's anything that the panel could kind of share on folks who feel like they might have gone out the gate too early and missed an opportunity, or people who are waiting for a perfect moment, which nothing might not ever be quite perfect.
I would argue on my side of things, again, I don't work heavily in the VC world. We do take on inventors with products, but they're usually pretty far down the line. I would just say, to me, in just developing how you talk about your product, it's never too early. I do think you should always have it. Like, once you're past idea on the back of a napkin stage, if you're really moving forward and you've got, say, for example, you have manufactured samples, or you have a product that's real, not just something you're doodling, but you have something that's really heading down the road, you filed for, some sort of intellectual property, or, that kind of thing. I do think you should have it, because you never know. I mean, I know people have made millions of dollars literally sitting next to the right person in a bar, or on a meeting someone on a golf course, or in an elevator, or, and that really does happen. So I would say, be ready to talk, or give a 1.5 to 2 minute concise synopsis of what your product, or what your idea, or what you do at all times. Just be ready. And you're never too early to do that, and to work on it, or to, in a sense, even rehearse it. I always be able to talk about your product. That's how motion creates emotion. Always be ready.
Motion creates emotion. I like that. You know what, Scott? Me and you.
I want to talk to you. You entertain the heck out of me. Look for your website. You're fantastic. I like you.
Yeah, we definitely got to connect. So I think this is a common question. When is too early, right? And as a Black founder, you may not be able to find capital in your friends from a friends and family standpoint, just because of the lack of generational capital that's available. That may not be most successful for you. So sometimes, again, like Scott mentioned, if you ever move forward and that this is something that you're going to do, you're trying to get your MVP together, that kind of thing. Pitching is it may not always be directly for funding. Who can you pitch around you for some resources? Could you be working with, Dr. Metcalf's organization? Could you be working with Black Girl Ventures? Where can you be working to actually constantly talking about your business so that you can refine and get to the place? Because you build relationships, then you build a business, right? So those relationships are so key to you getting funding later. And pitching is a speaking opportunity. So, enter into pitch competitions and that have capital attached. That can be a great way to get some money in the beginning. And it's also a great way to get yourself in front of people so that you can get the feedback so that you can grow. So I would be looking at pitching, not solely from a funding standpoint, but, get out there and start talking about it so you can do some of the customer discovery. And if investors or funders are going to be a part of that pool of people that you need, you also need to do some customer discovery with them as well, to figure out, how do I become more valuable as a product and as a company.
So that's great, Shelly. And you mentioned the word confidence. And so I know that a lot of folks have an issue right away with, they're still trying to, figure out exactly how to make everything happen, right? And they might be stressed, and who knows with all the other things going on in life. And what if people are worried about the confidence that they exude as they're trying to pitch? And I mean, Scott, in your sense, on TV, I mean, the things that people are concerned about, do you have any advice for folks that are trying to learn the skills that they might not be used to public speaking? They might not be used to being able to, kind of encapsulate years of passion and research and work into a tiny period of time.
Oh, such a great question, Brittany. And I get asked it all the time, and it's hard. And I want to give a good answer. I was just lucky to have been born a big idiot blowhard. You know what I mean? I just got lucky. Family full of blowhards. I mean, I just kind of got lucky that way, in a sense that it doesn't scare me. But there's a lot of other things. Doing what Shelly and Dr. Metcalf do, I couldn't do what they do. They're much more intelligent than I am. They're doing much more creative, outward going things than what I'm doing. I just know that I can talk about something when given to me, because it just doesn't, being in front of the cameras, for some reason, just doesn't concern me. Other people it does. There's an old trick that we use in our business that when you are rehearsing what you want to say, and there's, real quick, I'd say there's a couple books you should get to learn about selling. One's called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, and the other one is called Selling the Invisible. 2 quick reads, but they have really great tips in them. But something a lot of people, when they're trying to learn how to do, it's an old trick, they do it like this. They talk like this to their hand, and they talk about their item. There's something about having a hand in front of your face that kind of messes you up mentally. And I don't know what it is, but people will literally, or you stand in a corner, like you've been put in a corner as a child, and you talk about your product in a corner. And it's this dumb little trick, but I know it's helped a ton of people to do it. And then the other thing is sometimes it's just not for everyone. So maybe if, again, I come from the product world, but what I always say to people is, okay, if you don't, if you're not comfortable with it, then maybe you have a friend who is. Maybe you've got a drinking partner who, you go out and meet up, or, someone in a book club or who's really good, and say, hey, would you mind coming with me, to a trade show or to a pitch con, would you mind giving this a shot? Because sometimes, I don't tell my mechanic how to fix my car, and I don't know how to fix a car. So sometimes it's just not for everybody, but, rehearsal, chance favors the prepared mind.
Definitely. Heather, do you have any insights in terms of folks who, especially when you're working maybe more in the university setting or people coming from the research world, and then now they're trying to interact with all different kinds of audiences or groups that, it might not be, such a big deal sounding, but however, there can still be that, trepidation. So anything that you have to share?
Yeah, I think working with entrepreneurs who have a scientific or an engineering background, when they come to it, they have learned to talk about their science or their engineering work as experts because they've been groomed over time within their discipline to do that. They can give an academic presentation with just like you would give an elevator pitch. And so I think it's a matter of teaching them to develop self-efficacy and speaking to the other elements and talking to different audiences and in a more kind of generally accessible way about the work that you're doing. So I think the practice piece that you were mentioning, Scott, is really key, and it's something that we do with our entrepreneurs several times throughout the program. The Accelerator program is give them the opportunity to do pitch practice with different investors who sit on our advisory board, and they get really candid feedback. But they also know that that feedback is coming from a place of, from a group of people who are invested in their, like emotionally invested in positive professional growth for our entrepreneurs. And so it's a really, really valuable opportunity. I think also the idea of looking at it outside of a formal setting and practicing talking about the work that you do with different folks to get resources, like Shelly mentioned, is super important, and knowing what your ask is. And one of the major aha moments that we've had with our entrepreneurs is that the skills that they learn through being able to practice their pitch, whether it's asking someone for resources or it's asking someone for money, is that this also applies back to the work that they do academically as well. It makes them stronger candidates for grant applications because they can write about the value added. It makes them stronger in getting buy-in with their collaborators on the work that they do. And so it has a benefit outside of just the stereotypical spaces that we think of as pitching within.
Sure. Heather, I think you packed quite a few nuggets. Thank you so much for that. Being able to run through things and be able to rely on people that can help you along the journey is important. So I did want to do my own kind of quick pitch or plug for, there's a few networks that our office works with that help folks that are trying to commercialize research kind of from lab to market. And so it's pretty incredible around the country, especially if you're coming from the more technical side of things of how do you translate. But there's also teams that are applying for funding in the Small Business Innovation Research SBIR realm that they do have kind of they brought the entrepreneur side to it as well. And so I've always found it interesting on those teams. There are certain times where they'll have kind of the face be for the pitch, the business side of things, because they're able to kind of use the right terminology, phrasing, kind of the connection of what this is, as Scott said in the beginning, like, what is this, what does this do for me? But then there's also a time where it can be more technical, and especially if you're trying to kind of compete in that realm, being able to have someone that really knows their science can make a difference to a certain kind of audience or founder as well.
Hey, Brittany.
Sure, Scott.
I'm so sorry, but I really want to touch on something Dr. Metcalf said, because I think it's so incredibly important. Having done pitch panels all over the country, the feedback, gosh, that is so important. And not just getting it, but listening to it. And I cannot tell you how many inventors I've seen blow opportunities in front of buyers from like Home Depot or Walmart because they're arguing about whether or not their product should be a certain color or a product, they give them feedback and say, and we call it founder syndrome. And what meaning like nobody knows more about your product than you do. True, because you invented it, but you don't know how to market it. Otherwise you wouldn't be going to these pitching panels or all this stuff. So when you have experts, like the colleagues on this panel, listen to what they have to say because they know what they're talking about because they've done it. And I use this phrase all the time. With your invention or your product or your idea, nobody's telling you your baby's ugly. It just may need a haircut, and that's fine. Just go with that and listen to feedback and take it. Just don't go the other way and be abrasive. Because again, the whole horse jockey thing, if you're felt as being, combative, and you're unwilling to take, advice or constructive feedback, to Shelly's point, who's going to work with you?
Yeah.
Definitely. We're having some questions start to come in from the audience, so I do want to make sure we can touch on some of those. Now, this can be quite a challenge in terms of the length of time that you have. So there is a question about if I only had 30 seconds to give this pitch and I'm trying to really get things across, what should I make sure that I include up front?
Yeah, I would say this is where, so you should prepare different time pitches. You should prepare a 30-second pitch. You should prepare a 3-minute pitch, a 5-minute pitch. And I mean, depending on where you are in your cycle, maybe even a 20-minute pitch, 15 to 20. It just depends on where you are and what you're doing. This is where you want to have your very high level concept pitch, which is just like, you want to have your 2 things you put together is the way I look at it. So if I say Facebook for professionals, what's that? That's LinkedIn, right? So you want to try to put together like you are the blank of blank. You are the, you are the Uber of the sports industry. I mean, I don't know, I made that up, but I'm just saying like that will help your 30-second pitch move faster because that's the things that people get. The mainstream is like, oh, got it. Now tell me where the finances are. So like you have, they don't need to understand market size when you can do that because they know that these 2 things already have a large market size. So if you have 30 seconds and you're in that elevator pitch, you want to put together 2 things and it's called a high concept pitch.
That's great. Anything to add?
Sadly, broken record. What does it do? What's it do for me? Quick reference to the market size. I think it's really important to show that you've done your research. The candy market is the $3 billion a year, and that. Show very quickly that you understand this market. Again, it's not a hobby for you; it's a profession. And why? And then, of course, I always think. Again, I only think in the product world, product differentiation. What makes your product better? Okay, because if you're selling a pen, there's a million pens out there. Why is your pen better? Well, it's got special Scott Hynd rollerball technology that doesn't smear the ink and it starts up perfect every time. Whatever it might be, understand what, and also then finally, very quickly, understand what the market looks like in terms of competition. What are other products priced at, and why would yours in theory be priced that way or in that area, and what benefits do you have over the others?
Love it. I would just add, because I totally agree with these different points that have already been made, is the only thing that I haven't heard is making sure that you don't forget your ask. The ask is really important if you want to continue the conversation. So you can give your pitch, but make sure they know what it is that what you want and what you need.
I've definitely had that happen to me before where someone says, I have this thing and it's amazing. And I'm like, that's great. And then we walk away and I'm like, but I don't even know what they want. And so that's a good point to add. No, definitely. It's great to hear you all. And Scott, I don't think you can repeat some of these things enough. And I think that's kind of the value of some of these panels.
Try being my wife. I don't know.
No, but even for all of us, right, that, you hear things and some of it can be intuitive, but depending on the timing of where someone is kind of in their journey or what their experience has been so far, it can mean a different thing. So I definitely think it's important for us to talk about and even kind of reframe it just so that it can and find that connection. So another question that's coming in is, let's say there's a kind of a pitch situation that's more of a prize competition pitch setting versus for venture capital. You know, is there any kind of advice that you would say that someone should focus on in that situation? Should numbers be part of that in terms of kind of the proposed impact? And I know, Shelly, you probably worked more in that prize situation, not to call you out, but Heather, Scott, feel free to jump in too. If people are just trying to win either recognition or win something outside of, you know, specific funding.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the things we already mentioned are not necessarily different. You want to make sure you have your ask, make sure you know what it is, why it is, how does it appeal to the people, whoever the judges are, because 9 times out of 10 there's still somebody judging in order for you to win those things. One of the things that I think has been really key with our competition is that people have been able to say, and with just a $30 donation, I'm going to do X. So the ask won't necessarily be like, I'm looking for a $20,000 investment, you know, kind of thing. But it might be something where it's like, with this prize, top prize, I will be able to do blah, come do blah with me. Like that might be your kind of closing where you're acknowledging some of the, depending on what the resource is or the award is, or, you know, what that looks like. I would say like putting that in your pitch. So like, you know, people love when you have wherever you are in the pitch. So like if you are at a particular place or it's a particular kind of technology conference or something, like you want to tailor that pitch to who that audience is and what that, and somewhat around what that prize is for.
So that's great. Anything to add, Heather or Scott?
Good, Dr. Metcalf.
Oh, I would just add that a lot of times for pitch competitions, there are details on what it is that they're looking for in the pitch. So it's, again, do your homework and check out what the criteria are and make sure that you're touching on them when you're delivering your pitch. You know, I think that a lot of pitch competitions give that information away so that it's not so much of a secret what it is that the judges are going to be looking for. So make sure you take that into account. That's great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of being concise, cogent. You know, those are pretty obvious, but a lot of people struggle with that. You know, I'm sure my colleagues have been a part of these events where you see someone just rambling on, you know, and they have a very good product, but they're just all over the place like a goldfish. And I'm just such a big things we call in our part of the business called the triple tie down. So what that is tie downs, meaning just end on good, firm, cogent thoughts. For example, if you're selling a deep cleaner, a carpet cleaner, you say, oh, it makes my carpets look better, feel better, and smell better. You know, it's ideas of being concise, of driving home the idea of why they want it, why this is a great idea or a great product, but just doing it in a concise, and I know it sounds gimmicky and trade showy, but that is kind of what works. And and the example I give, and I hate to give it because it sounds so cliche, but Shark Tank, you know, you think all those inventors really knew how to do those pitches that they do? So no, they get coached up by the best in the business. I know a ton of them, and they get coached up, and that's great. It is great television. It's a great show, great people, and it's made inventors millions and millions of dollars. But what are the odds that every inventor rolled in there knowing how to do a professional pitch? None. They got coached up. Watch Shark Tank. I mean, really, honestly, watch what the inventors do there. It is the best inventor amateur pitching out there, and you can get a lot, you know, good use of props, good use of, you know, just fun and jokes, but again, those concise tie downs, I think, in the actual diction of your pitch is really, really important.
Scott, I'm really glad you brought that up. There's another question that came in about how to overcome nervousness. And I think you kind of touched on that in your answer in terms of just knowing that there's other people out there who have been able to accomplish great things because of their pitch and how they kind of completed that. But they had, you know, they could have had coaching and practice, and we've talked about feedback. So, you know, there are some things that we can learn if we're not kind of born with that exuberance that Scott mentioned, you know, in terms of loving that which is great. And you look around and, you know, we are so different, but no, it's good to hone in on the things that you know are intrinsic. If you've been working on something fantastic, but you just don't have that sheen yet that you feel, what can you do to offset that? And so that's kind of some of the things that we've brought up so far today. I do want to touch on now shifting slightly, but you know, all of you in a certain fashion have worked with entrepreneurs that are building new products or new things. So can we just talk briefly about the IP side in terms of, you know, you're giving a pitch. Let's say you have certain parts of your technology protected. You know, how do people go about approaching, you know, wanting to be cautious of what they're talking about and not sharing too much? But do you have any advice based on your experience of how people can approach, you know, intellectual property or patenting kind of overlaid in this pitch environment?
So having IP is a unique value is a part of your unique value proposition. Because, you know, some people don't a lot of times. So the fact that you have something that is patentable, or you already have gone and secured some of that, because it's property, it's intellectual property. So it is an asset. On the flip side, signing NDAs just to pitch, it's not usually viewed as favorable. You should have a pitch that you can use that could be public, that you're not so worried about what somebody's going to see or say or any of those things. Good ideas don't look like things that people want to steal because they don't want to execute as far as you've executed. I mean, now I say that with a grain of salt in the sense that, like, I'm not saying that there's not ever a time where somebody possibly had something stolen from them or thought, or in your head, it's not a business. So when you just tell someone what you're doing, but you're not actually moving on it, getting the MVP done, it's not a business yet, right? So I've had people be like, oh, somebody stole my idea. I'm like, well, were you executing on it or were you just talking to them? Right? It's totally different. So when founders are like, oh, I can't share my deck because it has proprietary information. I'm like, what proprietary information is on the deck? You know, like, seriously.
Ideas are a dime a dozen. Yep.
You will miss out on opportunity having so much fear around people who have an understanding of what you do, because they need to be let in to buy. They need to be let in to invest. If we can't understand what you're doing, then, you know, we won't be able to be let in to buy or invest.
Yeah, Shelly, gosh, you and I are kindred spirits because you could not be more spot on. It is. Listen, I am an enormous believer in the patent system. You know, that's at the UIA. We believe in that. We defend patents. I happen to be an attorney. I was never smart enough to be a patent attorney, I assure you. But I believe in that system. That said, Shelly, you are so spot on. All patents do, at the end of the day, they're extremely important, but they protect you in the end when you've been wronged. But they don't protect you from getting wronged. You know, from people taking. So get out there, and to your point, have something that gives an idea, but there are going to be people who knock you off. It happens all the time. You can't be afraid of it. You can't go through this process scared. Just be better, be quicker, faster to market. You know more than anybody else about this product, and that's why you want to try and get it out there. But if you hide behind the idea of this is proprietary or this is, you know, I'm patent pending, whatever, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. You've got to get out and do it. And it doesn't mean you're giving away the recipe, but you let them have a sample of the food.
You have all the anecdotes. You have all of them. I'm here for it. Yes.
I agree with this. A lot of times, especially working with inventors who have stuff with really complicated science and engineering behind it, that, you know, when we're working with these folks, they get really afraid about letting that information out because I think they're trained in the idea that their science has to be replicable. And so if they share it, then someone can replicate it. And I think that's not the level of information that should ever be on any deck anyway. And if you're putting up a wall to not let information get out, you're also not letting resources come in. It can't get past that wall. And so you have to be willing to create a doorway there for yourself to share information at the appropriate level in order to be able to get resources and support in.
Oh, that's fantastic, Heather. I mean, all three of you have these great anecdotes and kind of visualizations, I think, that are so helpful here. There's another question that came in kind of on this about that NDA and just, should I get that from everyone? And, I don't know if you agree, Shelly, but kind of thinking about how you first talked about the 30-second pitch, minute, 5 minute, 10 minutes, also having ideas of what you're going to talk about at what stage. So I think, from here, to start straight out with an NDA for every kind of pitch seems like a big wall, like Heather's mentioning. So trying to be able to distinguish of when you'd be sharing information and being able to be open is definitely key. Now let's talk about risk for a moment here, not to go in the scary side of things, but I think people do get concerned about, am I, doing something that I'm kind of hurting myself before I'm ever getting to that final ask? Like, are there any red flag behaviors or, pieces to the pitch that you see in people that you think they should try to avoid, and avoid at all costs so that they don't kind of end up stumbling along the way? So anyone, it could be your favorite, least favorite red flag.
I'll go quick, sorry, because I'm the ham here. This is really specific, but I'm telling you, it comes up all the time. Don't overuse nonsense words in your pitch. Revolutionary, astonishing, all that kind of stuff. I hate it. It drives me insane, and it's patronizing to the people you're pitching to. There are only been a handful of products in the history of of mankind that have been truly revolutionary. The personal computer, the wheel, the microwave, whatever, the telephone. It is extremely rare that your product or idea is truly revolutionary. It's possible, but not probable. The example I gave of a company that just went out of business, just stopped making it. I use this all the time. And 15 years ago, there was this big buzz around this revolutionary new product that was going to revolutionize personal transportation. And it was called It, and it debuted on the Today Show or Good Morning America. All this buzz, they brought it out, and you know what it was? The Segway. How many people watching right now or on this panel own a Segway? No one. You've done it on a tour somewhere in the islands, but no one owns a Segway. It wasn't revolutionary. And so those are the things, to me, it sounds like a very specific pet peeve, but keep your metrics between the goalposts.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be distracting, right? So if you're like a Scott, for instance, if someone is pitching and you're around and they start using these words, you kind of focus in on, and you're already creating that doubt.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say like people not knowing their numbers, and we call it like your mix match. So like your voice track is not matching like your visual. So like you're talking and you're saying these things, and we're looking at the slide like, what? or you're running numbers and know that like most of the time, I'll say, not all the time, but a lot of the time, the people who are judges, they can run numbers quick. So like you'll put up like, oh, I'm gonna have X amount of customers, X amount of revenue, and we're like, that does not add up, right? Also the unique value part.
Shelly, on that one real quick. Yeah, the candy market's $1 billion a year. If I just get 1% of that, you're like, oh no, don't, please.
Right. Every time, everybody's gonna get 1% of the biggest market ever. Every time.
Don't do that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Another one is the unique value part.
So little.
the unique value proposition. When you say you're the only one, it is not favorable because that means you're risky. That means nobody's learned lessons in that industry market with that product. So I don't necessarily want you to be the only one. Also, there's your unique value proposition comes from the customer journey and whether or not, so if you take great case studies like Southwest Airlines, right? They're not actually in competition with other airlines per se, right? So they didn't go make a fancier plane. They didn't be like, oh, look how my plane has this better wing. No, they did focus on the process of the customer. So their competition is really cars, buses, and trains. And so, even if you take something like Planet Fitness, which is a super great case study, because they're the anti-gym. So sometimes you think you have to be the only one doing a certain thing, but you might actually have a niche in that customer's journey. How does the customer feel? What part of the customer do you serve the best? So a lot of times people will say they're unique because they're the only one, or you haven't made any real, like you have to be in business in order to figure out your unique value proposition, really. At first, you're just kind of guessing.
Real quick, whenever I hear somebody say there's nothing out there like it, oh God.
Right.
No,
Right.
there's always something like it. Like
Always.
might be better. There's always something like it. Like just
Always.
don't ever use that phrase. There's nothing like it. No, there is. I guarantee it.
Yeah, we're the only one like this. Nobody has this. No one is doing. I'm like, please. You just haven't met them yet, but it is the only one. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you guys are wonderful here, and we are getting somewhat close to the end, which is unfortunate. But I did want to bring up one more thing before we kind of get into some of your last thoughts, stories, anecdotes, and resources. But just speaking of risk too, even how you're kind of coming up front, whether it's with the numbers, whether it's with, you know, you're trying to say that you have that unique value, but you're not alone. You're not the only one. But Heather, I know you had brought up some things in the past too about risk and even being able to turn risk on its head and being able to upfront be able to address some of those criticisms. Just wanted to know if you would share any of that here with the group.
Sure. So Brittany's referring to a conversation that we had while we were preparing for this panel, where I was sharing a bit about the research on how venture capitalists ask questions differently for men who are entrepreneurs compared to women who are entrepreneurs, where the tendency is to ask women more questions about risk and men more questions about opportunity. And the impact that has is not only men getting invested in more regularly, but getting higher investment amounts. And so in all honesty, what investors really should be looking for is a combination of questions that they ask of everyone about risk and opportunity. And so the way that we've worked with our entrepreneurs around this when they experience this line of questioning when they're delivering a pitch to venture capitalists is to think about their goals for any given interaction. You know, is their goal to point out that they're noticing this difference in the ways that questions are being asked because they're not really wanting to work with that investor anyway? Is their goal to successfully get funding from the investor, in which case they may want to answer the question that they wanted to be asked? So flipping the question about risk into something about opportunity. So for example, if you're asked a question about, on the customer side, about how you're going to prevent customer attrition, you could turn it into how you're going to foster retention and growth, just as an example. And so it's all about thinking through what it is that you want out of that interaction, and do you want to work with that investor? And if so, can you flip the script a little bit and reclaim some of the story that you want to tell about your company on your own terms?
Yes, thank you so much for that, Heather. I know that, again, as we mentioned, we can't dive deep into every part of a pitch, but hopefully that does resonate with some of you out there in terms of thinking. Now, there was another question about, you know, I think based off of Scott's comment with bringing up some books. Does anyone have additional resources that they would like to mention now, whether it is, you know, kind of a book or organizations that help, or, you know, it could be a podcast, a show, or a meditation routine that helps them improve their pitch process?
Gimlet Media has a few podcasts that are great. One of them is called The Startup. And it's really talking a lot about, and then there's also, and I can't think of it right now at the top of my head, but there's a couple called The Pitch. If you are a Black or brown women founder out there, I definitely invite you to join BGV Connect. Black Girl Ventures, we host virtual co-working every Wednesday, and we also host virtual pitch practice every Wednesday. So, and we're also running a lot of content around the same thing. So I would say, check us out at blackgirlventures.org and take a look at the things that we have going on.
The two books that I would say, the two books I would say are the ones I said, Selling the Invisible and the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. That book, the 22 Immutable Laws, is only about this big. It's really easy to read. And it was written, I think, in 1987, something like that. It still holds true today. It is amazing. It's phenomenal. Like, it just gives you the idea. Things like what Shelly was saying about Southwest Airlines, you know, if you're not the first, be the best. Or, you know, like, there's all these very anecdotal things that you can see I'm the king of, but you pick up from that really, I'm just such a believer in that book. And Selling the Invisible, I think, is great too.
These are such great resources. When I'm thinking about resources for sharing with entrepreneurs or with innovators, I really think about the folks who tend to be marginalized in ecosystems. So people of color, women, people with disabilities, LGBTQ folks, because there are so many books that are out there that tell a story that often is kind of a normative pathway through entrepreneurship that may not reflect what their experiences are. And so I think about it from that perspective. And I definitely love the work that you're doing at Black Girl Ventures, Shelly. I think it's amazing. And I would also refer people there from marginalized backgrounds to check out what she's doing. I think that it's really great. I also have really enjoyed Backstage Capital's resources as well. And Arlen Hamilton has just released her book. It's About Damn Time. I think that's a really interesting text for people to check out if they're wanting to learn a little bit more about those experiences. And then I'd also recommend people to always, if they need resources, they can find us at stemtomarket.org for our accelerator. We put resources up on our website as well, and always put announcements up about when we have a new cohort starting up.
Thank you so much for that. I also want to add in, if you've been part of other panels through invention-con, you've seen some of my colleagues at SBA, but there's a whole host of organizations around the country that can possibly help you along your journey as well. So on SBA.gov, you can find information for small business development centers, women's business development centers, and more.
Real quick, Brittany, sorry to interrupt. UIA, the board I sit on, United Inventors Association. I know some of the other board members have spoken in InventionCon. UIAUSA.org, nonprofit organization, puts you in touch with local inventors groups in your area. And there are a lot for, like Dr. Metcalf said, a lot of groups for inventors that are from traditionally disenfranchised segments of our population. And it is absolutely a phenomenal resource. I do a lot of work with a great man named Calvin Flowers out in Chicago. He runs an organization formerly called Chicago Black Inventors Organization. Now it's just Chicago Inventors Organization. One of the great men I've ever met on this planet. I'm speaking at his event in October. That came from a UIA USA website. Like I said, nonprofit. No one has a horse in the race. Go there and get a lot of information.
That's fantastic. If any of you in the audience are worried that you didn't catch something that someone shared, or you got so excited you didn't write it all down enough, our wonderful colleague here, Sean, has offered to have these resources ready. So Sean, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder here, but I do know that these things are going to be captured and available after this event. So we want to make sure that you have that, that you're equipped for the next steps in your journey. And so at this point, we're going to wrap up the panel here. Just to thank you so much to all of my panelists, Shelly, Scott, and Heather. Fantastic. Loved being with you. Even on camera, I could still feel your energy here, and I really do appreciate that. And thank you so much, Sean, for having us with you today.
I thank you all for being on the panel today. Thank you, Brittany, for moderating. I'll let you guys go ahead and exit. We'll have our next panel start by turning on their cameras.